Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be talking about DaVinci Paint Co, which is a paint company that produces oil paints, acrylic paints, watercolor, you name it. In today's video we're going to be specifically talking about their watercolors, as that is the only type of paint from them that I currently have. I am looking to get the oil paints in the near future, but that's still a little bit ways off, so excited for that nonetheless. But for today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you how I painted this butterfly on a flower. It's a lily. I think it's a swallowtail butterfly, if I'm not mistaken. It's the start of a new series called Butterfly in Blooms. Not the most original title, but it describes it perfectly. I want to do more pictures of butterflies on flowers. In fact, I've already started my second one, which I'm really excited for. That one is a monarch butterfly. If you saw my sketchbook video, you'll see the preview of what it's going to look like in colored pencil in my sketchbook that I was practicing for. Yeah, so I'm really excited for that. And speaking of things coming soon, I want to offer prints of these in the semi-near future, so that's going to be very exciting. Speaking of things in the near future, at 500 subscribers, I'm going to have the studio tour that I've talked about here for a little bit. I've already started cleaning up this space all along this wall, and I can't wait to share it with you guys when it's all ready to go. So if you're new here, consider subscribing to the channel. If you love studio tours, we're getting really close. And then also at 500, I'm launching my Patreon, which is currently technically launched. If you want to take a look at it and leave a comment down below, your opinion on what it looks like, how do you, is it fair? What do you think? Some room for improvement? Anything like that, go ahead and leave it in the comment section down below. I would really like to hear your opinion to help it grow and be something successful. So I thank you in advance. Yeah, and I think that's about it. So how about we get started and talk about DaVinci Paint Co, watercolors, and watch the footage of how I painted the butterfly. Alright, so let's get on into these paints. Real quick, as the video's going, as I'm talking about DaVinci Paint Co, reviewing them, talking about their paints. In the background is going to be me painting a, I believe, swallowtail butterfly on a lily. Super fun. I hope you enjoy it. As you'll notice throughout the video, I'm using several different techniques with the paint to kind of test them out. One of them actually being an accident. You'll be able to tell where the accident is. So we'll get on into that portion later. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about the company themselves, their history, and what they're about. The company began in 1975 when the now owner's father moved to California. Although their paint formula for oil paints was 100 years in the making. They started with oil paints, and they mostly sold in local family art shops, and it took a long time to establish a following, which is the same with pretty much everything we do. However, in the 80s, they formulated watercolors. So DaVinci watercolors have been around probably older than me even. Their key thing that they did was make permanent alizarin crimson for the first time. If you don't know, alizarin crimson, the original one, is a fugitive color. It just doesn't last. It's a beautiful color, but it's not there. It's fugitive. So having a permanent alizarin crimson was a big deal. The other thing that they did with their watercolors that was different from everybody else is watercolors should normally come in sizes like 5 for their small, sometimes like 10, 11-ish, up to like 14 in that range. DaVinci Paint Co actually sold them in 37 milliliter tubes, which, if you're not familiar, is the standard for like an oil paint tube. So that was like huge, and the best part about it is they were competitively priced to the smaller sizes. So it was amazing for people that go through a lot of watercolor paint. It didn't take long after that for them to catch on, and they started to become a bigger company, and definitely there's been a lot of buzz around them in the last few years, of course. Now, the son bought it in 2012, but he's kept up the traditions of his family, and they care about their paints and their customers. It's great. A lot of love goes into it. They make sure they're every batch of paint is good, as they want us to have the best paint possible, and that feels great when ordering from a company that they really care about you. Um, so all those reasons of caring and passion and everything, and hearing about them from other people saying good things, made me buy them last year. Every so often they do offer a sale. Usually something like 60% off, which is a great time to buy if you're a little on the fence and you want to try it. That's what I did. So I catch them on their sales and grab new paints whenever I've got the desire to have a little retail therapy and pick out some new colors, which I just did recently. But yeah, no, they're a great company, and I'm excited to always work with their paints from now on. It's going to be one of my staple palettes. And speaking of my staple palette and this painting, how about we get on into the review portion where I talk a little bit more about the techniques I used, other interesting things I noticed, and just give you my review, my thoughts, some tips and tricks, everything like that. So getting right on into this painting, you've no doubt seen, if you've been watching the background, that I have tried wet on dry, I have tried wet on wet, I've tried dipping the tip of my brush into the wet area to test how far it blooms, um, feathering with wet paint and water, and just all sorts of different things. And each time I was very happy with how the results turned out. Particularly, I think their wet on wet is beautiful. They don't have the largest bloom, but sometimes you don't want a very large bloom of watercolor. Blending is amazing, as you can tell here on the leftmost petal. That fade from the orange to the yellow to some white in there is just gorgeous. The stem needs a little bit more work, which I did later, but it was a wet on dry and it was gorgeous. And just really, I've been enjoying using these paints because they re-wet great, because I take the tubes and pour them into half pans. So I'm testing them from a dried state and they re-wet beautifully. I haven't had any trouble with any of the paints I've used. And in this painting, I did use a variety of colors and pigments. Some of the colors I did end up using was DaVinci Orange, Hansa Yellow Light, Hansa Yellow Deep, a little bit of Permanent Red, was most of the colors in the bloom itself. Denise's Green and Phthalo Green Yellow shade went into the stem. And then the reason I picked this subject in particular for this video is in my most recent purchase of DaVinci watercolors, I picked up Nickel Titanite Yellow, and I thought that was the perfect color for this butterfly. So I jumped on that and used the Nickel Titanite for the butterfly body. I used neutral tint for my black in this piece, and then I used just a little bit of phthalo blue green shade and some cobalt turquoise in a couple other shades to make the final dots on the piece. So that's that. So if you were curious about the colors I used, maybe not the most amount of colors I could have used, but this butterfly on this lily just really spoke to me, and it said paint me in DaVinci watercolors, so I said yes. But yeah, as you can see, there's just little dots of paint just bloom on the page. The blending is nice. I'm doing layers on top of layers, and it's just, honestly, it was a dream to paint. So as you can see, we've worked up several layers by this point, and the piece is really starting to come together. Although in just a few moments, I'm about to make a critical error in my painting. I made an oopsie. Um, I did this section of the flower right here, and I was working on deepening the oranges and getting a little bit more three-dimensional with it. And I was very happy with it. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to work on the butterfly now. And rather than work on its wings again, yep, I went right into the wet paint without even thinking. Luckily enough, that did work out well because I got to practice lifting off color and getting rid of color. And as you can see, there's only a little tiny bit of that neutral tint left, which is amazing. That's such a dark color on such a lighter color of orange that to lift that much to the point where you can't even really tell there's anything there anymore is amazing. That's an amazing property to have if you make an oopsie like me. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the lifting, and the ability to remove paint from a painting is just phenomenal for DaVinci watercolors. So that's a big A plus for me, and maybe it's not for you, but it is definitely worth noting of their lifting capabilities, even on such darker pigments. So we're finishing up here with the last bits of the piece, and I just want to talk a little bit about overall of DaVinci watercolors, and that they're a high quality artist grade paint. Um, there's just an amazing quality to it. From the tube pouring into a pan, it's got a lovely consistency. It dries nice. It's not very tacky like a honey watercolor. They re-wet like a dream. I've had no trouble re-wetting any of my pans of watercolor. There is an amazing selection of colors to choose from. Some sizes don't carry all of the colors. I know their smaller size tube doesn't contain all their colors, which is why I went for, I believe they're 15 milliliter tubes right in the middle. But that's okay, because if you can get them on a sale, like I've said before, if you get them on a sale, the prices are amazing. And even without, they're still comparable to other brands in price. In the US, I don't know if this brand is too expensive outside the US. I would imagine so, but if you live outside the US and you know for sure, leave a comment down below to help everybody out outside the US. Speaking of leaving a comment down below, do tell me how you liked the video. This one was a little bit harder to put together and took a little bit longer. So I just want to know if you guys enjoyed it, if you found it helpful, if it helped you push in a direction, if you want to get DaVinci paints or not. But yeah, no, like the video. If you're new here, consider subscribing to the channel. We have a lot of fun things coming up at 500 and 1,000 subscribers. We've got a studio tour. We got a Patreon launch. We have all sorts of goodies coming up, which, speaking of, links to all of that will be in the description box down below if you want to check any of it out. It's there if you want to follow me on Instagram for art, if you want to follow my Patreon for works in progress and other goodies, and just all sorts of stuff to be had there. But I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap things up. The painting's almost done, and really, I had a great time doing this video. It took a lot of work, but I had a great time. And I really love how it turned out. I think it looks gorgeous. And I'm going to continue this series of butterflies on flowers called Butterfly in Bloom. I think I mentioned that in the beginning. So I'm going to be doing a whole series of butterflies on flowers using DaVinci watercolors. So that's exciting. So like I said, follow Instagram, Patreon, any of that to see previews and finalized pieces of that. But yeah, I guess that's about it. I will wish you guys well. So take care. Have a good one. And bye for now.